Hello, and welcome to today's teaching. We hope it's a blessing for you. Here is Pastor Joe.
Well, welcome back. Trust you're having a good day in Jesus. We are continuing our study that we started last week on words, the power of words, and in particular what they do to others. And so this week we want to continue along that line. We want to look at this week on a very powerful aspect of words, and that is words in our marriage or in our marital relationship. And so the scripture we're going to use today is found in the book of Job, and it's going to be in the Amplified version. And so this week we're talking about marriage. We're talking about how words can be damaged and are set on fire by our remarks. Our relationship, our marriage can be damaged or set on fire by the remarks that we make. That's what we're going to be talking about this week. And so it's important that we understand how in a marriage, how our words can be so devastating, how just the remarks we make back and forth to one another. And so that's why I thought it was really important for this week that we go along this line, because we are talking about words and their power to affect, and their power to touch and change. And really, like last week, we talked about how it could be a vicious cycle going down. This week, we will talk about just setting things on fire, destroying marriages. So again, we're looking at the book of Job, and this is Job chapter 19, verse 2 in the Amplified. And it reads, "How long will you vex and torment me and break me in pieces with words?" See, church, that's why it's very important that we understand that thing right there. Job was saying he's being vexed and tormented and broken in pieces by words. See, church, in our relationships, especially with our spouses, it's important we understand that, man, our words can just rip one another up, because in a marriage, as you know, it's not just a physical thing, it's a spiritual thing. And we're coming together spiritually, we're coming together emotionally, we're coming together physically, we're trying to come together as be one. And so when we start saying things about each other and to one another, and that can be very hurtful, I mean, it can just destroy a relationship. Let me read to you from this the book on communication that I have, and one of the things it says that I thought was very interesting was that when we enter into a marriage, we bring our own dictionary to the marriage, and unless these definitions are clarified, the words or spoke to each other cannot be understood. So what that means is that you come into a relationship with a certain vocabulary, a certain understanding, a certain way of communicating that could be totally foreign to your mate. Now, even though you may spend time together and go together and all those things, which you should before you get married, all those things are important. It's still the fact that sometimes some words that you mean, some expressions you have different understandings to the person you're speaking to, and you know that to be true in your just daily walk. But more importantly, in your marriage. And so I know that, you know, my wife is from New England area, and I'm an Arkansas boy. And so there is difference in just in our communication from the standpoint of language. She uses words that I don't use, and I use words she don't use. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about our dictionary. Words mean things to me that don't mean the same to her. Her words mean something to her that don't mean that to me. And it's important that we understand each other's dictionary, because what happens is we have filters that we put up, and everything that's been said to us comes through those filters. If we don't understand that word that this person's speaking to us, as it comes through, it's going to come through wrong. It's going to come through, it's very possible it's going to come through not at all what that person meant. And you had that happen in your life, I'm sure, where you said something to somebody and they turned it, they got all upset or didn't want to have anything to do with you, whatever might have come of it. And when you find out later, you're like, I didn't mean that at all. That's not what I meant. Well, that's the way it was taken. So in marriage, it's the same way. We have to understand that our words are very powerful when we speak to one another. And the reason being is because in a marriage we've come together and we've opened ourselves up to the other individual. And you see, if it's our first time marriage, then we're truly opening it up to each other for the very first time. Our hearts, our soul, our mind, our emotion, our soul, our mind, will, and emotions is being opened up totally to the other individual. If you come out of a marriage and going into a second marriage, or maybe even a third marriage, then you know that you're less likely to open up totally. Why is that? Because you've been hurt, and so because of that, you've been hurt. You don't want to open up all the way. And what have you been hurt? Well, sometimes with actions, but a lot of times with words, things that were spoken to you, things spoken about you, things spoken around you or to others about you, all these things. And so that's why it's important that we understand the power of our words, that these remarks can destroy and damage. Let me read to you a scripture here, the book of Proverbs, chapter 14. And it says this, it says that the wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands the foolish one tears hers down. See, church, the scripture there says that the wise woman builds it, but the foolish one with her own hands tears it down. It doesn't say the devil tears it down. It doesn't say that at all. It doesn't say that somebody across the street tears it down. It says, no, she tears it down with her own hands. And I'm not talking about an action. That's not talking about necessarily with your very hands that you're just tearing stuff up. No, what it means is by your actions, by your words, by your actions, you tear your house down. You see, so many times that people don't understand, well, what's going on? My marriage is like this, or my marriage, I don't understand why my marriage is like that. It didn't start off that way, but now it's this way. Well, it could be because most of the time it's because of what's been said to one another. That filter, those dictionaries, none of that stuff has been explained when you get started. And so you get into a situation where you're saying things. One thing, so you say something to somebody, and we talked about this last week, how you react back to that person. You don't respond to that person, you react back to them. And once you react back to them, well, they react back to you. So that's why it's important that we truly get a hold of the fact that, listen, the words that we say to our mate, particularly husband and wives, are very, very powerful, and they're very damaging. They can be very damaging if the person that's being spoken to doesn't understand. In this case, doesn't understand what you're actually saying. And so that's why communication, understanding what we're saying to one another. My wife and I have, like I've said before, we've talked about communication. We read books on communication. We've done things of this to help our marriage through the years. And so we've been married for 40 years, but we've worked on it. It hasn't been no easy thing. It's really been hard in a lot of areas because of our backgrounds and having to come through some things. And so it's been important that we understand how to communicate. And even today, I may say something that she don't like or she don't understand. She may say something I don't. But we've learned how to, okay, what are we saying here? What's being said? What did you mean by that? This is what it sounded like. This is what, and so we work through those things. But the main thing we talked about is the fact that we don't want to get into snipping at each other and cutting at each other. And that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. And those things, how they'll tear the marriage apart easily. So I thank you for today, and I trust it's been a good teaching. If it has, then there'll be you'll notice on the screen, there's other teachings that'll go along with this that'll help you. And so till next time, always remember that God's grace is greater than your sin. Be blessed.